It's so nice to be back reading the story today, and I've got the next instalment of Paddington. I've also got some exciting news, so stay listening to the end and I'll let you know what it is. Right then. Paddington was too far away to answer, even if he had heard. He was already halfway up the corridor, looking closely at all the doors. Eventually he came to one with a large star on it and the words Sir Seeley Bloom in big gold letters. Paddington drew a deep breath and then knocked loudly. There was no reply, so he knocked again. Still there was no reply, and so very cautiously he pushed open the door with his paw. "Go away," said a booming voice. "I don't want to see anyone." Paddington peered round the door. Sir Seeley Bloom was lying stretched out on a long couch. He looked tired and cross. He opened one eye and gazed at Paddington. "I'm not signing any autographs," he growled. "I don't want your autograph," said Paddington, fixing him with a hard stare. "I wouldn't want your autograph if I had my autograph book, and I haven't got my autograph book, so there." Sir Seeley sat up. "You don't want my autograph," he said in a surprised voice, "but everyone always wants my autograph." "Well, I don't," said Paddington. "I've come to tell you to take your daughter back." He gulped the last few words. The great man seemed to have grown to about twice the size he had been on the stage, and he looked as if he was going to explode any minute. Sir Seeley clutched his forehead. "You want me to take my daughter back?" he said at last. "That's right," said Paddington firmly, "and if you don't, I expect she can come and stay with Mr. and Mrs. Brown." Sir Seeley Bloom ran his hand distractedly through his hair and then pinched himself. "Mr. and Mrs. Brown," he repeated in a dazed voice. He looked wildly round the room and then dashed on the door. "Sarah," he called in a loud voice. "Sarah, come in here at once." He backed round the room until he had placed the couch between himself and Paddington. "Keep away, Bear," he said dramatically, and then peered at Paddington, for he was rather short-sighted. "You are a bear, aren't you?" he added. "That's right," said Paddington, "from darkest Peru." Sir Seeley looked at his woolen hat. "Well then," he said crossly, playing for time, "you ought to know better than to wear a green hat in my dressing room. Don't you know green is a very unlucky colour in the theatre? Take it off at once." "It's not my fault," said Paddington. "I wanted to wear my proper hat." He had just started to explain all about his hat when the door burst open and the lady called Sarah entered. Paddington immediately recognised her as Sir Seeley's daughter in the play. "It's all right," he said. "I've come to rescue you." "You what?" The lady seemed most surprised. "Sarah," Sir Seeley Bloom came out from behind the couch. "Sarah, protect me from this mad bear." "I'm not mad," said Paddington indignantly. "Then kindly explain what you are doing in my dressing room," boomed the great actor. Paddington sighed. Sometimes people were very slow to understand things. Patiently he explained it all to them. When he had finished, the lady called Sarah threw back her head and laughed. "I'm glad you think it's funny," said Sir Seeley. "But darling, don't you see," she said, "it's a great compliment. Paddington really believes you were throwing me out into the world without a penny. It shows what a great actor you are." Sir Seeley thought for a moment. He said gruffly. "Quite an understandable mistake, I suppose. He looks a remarkably intelligent bear, come to think of it." Paddington looked from one to the other. "Then you were only acting all the time," he faltered. The lady bent down and took his paw. "Of course, darling, but it was very kind of you to come to my rescue. I shall always remember it." "Well, I would have rescued you if you wanted it," said Paddington. Sir Seeley coughed. "Are you interested in the theatre, Bear?" he boomed. "Oh, yes," said Paddington, "very much. Except I don't like having to pay so much for everything. I want to be an actor when I grow up." The lady called Sarah jumped in. "Why, Seeley, darling," she said, looking at Paddington, "I've an idea." She whispered in Sir Seeley's ear, and then Sir Seeley looked at Paddington. "It's a bit unusual," he said thoughtfully, "but it's worth a try. Yes, it's certainly worth a try." In the theatre itself, the interval was almost at an end, and the Browns were getting restless. "Oh dear," said Mrs. Brown, "I wonder where he's got to." "If he doesn't hurry up," said Mr. Brown, "he's going to miss the start of the second act." Just then there was a knock at the door and an attendant handed him a note. "A young bear gentleman asked me to give you this," he announced. He said it was very urgent. Thank you," said Mr. Brown, taking the note and opening it. "What does it say?" said Mrs. Brown anxiously. "Is he all right?" Mr. Brown handed her the note to read. "Your guess is as good as mine," he said. Mrs. Brown looked at it. It was hastily written in pencil and it said, "I have been given a very important job, Paddington. P.S. I will tell you about it later." "Now what on earth can that mean?" she said. "Trust something unusual to happen to Paddington." "I don't know," said Mr. Brown, settling back in his chair as the lights went down, "but I'm not going to let it spoil the play." "I hope the second half is better than the first," said Jonathan. "I thought the first half was rotten. That man kept on forgetting his lines." The second half was much better than the first. From the moment Cecily strode onto the stage, the theatre was electrified. A great change had come over him. He no longer fumbled over his lines, and people who had coughed all through the first half now sat up in their seats and hung on to his every word. When the curtain finally came down on the end of the play, with Cecily's daughter returning to his arms, there was a great burst of applause. The curtain rose again and the whole company bowed to the audience. Then it rose while Cecily and Sarah bowed, but still the cheering went on. Finally, Sir Cecily stepped forward and raised his hand for quiet. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "thank you for your kind applause. We are indeed most grateful. But before you leave, I would like to introduce the youngest and most important member of our company." A young, bear came to our rescue. The rest of Cecily's speech was drowned in a buzz of excitement as he stepped forward to the very front of the stage, where a small screen hid a hole in the boards which was the prompt box. He took hold of one of Paddington's paws and pulled. Paddington's head appeared through the hole. In his other paw he was grasping a copy of the script. "Come along, Paddington," said Cecily. "Come and take your bow." "Oh, I can't," gasped Paddington. "I think I'm stuck." And stuck he was. It took several stagehands, the firemen, and a lot of butter to remove him after the audience had gone. But he was far enough out to twist round and raise his hat to the cheering crowd before the curtain came down for the last time. Several nights later, anyone going into Paddington's room would have found him sitting up in bed with his scrapbook, a pair of scissors and a pot of paste. He was busy pasting in a picture of Sir Cecily Bloom, which the great man had signed. To Paddington, with grateful thanks. There was also a signed picture from the lady called Sarah, and one of the proudest possessions, a newspaper cutting about the play, headed, "Paddington Saves the Day." Mr. Grubber had told him that the photographs were probably worth a bit of money, but after much thought he had decided not to part with them. In any case, Sir Cecily Bloom had given him his 20p back and a pair of opera glasses. Oh my goodness, Paddington is up to so many adventures. I hope you enjoyed that. Right, the big news is that we have actually nearly finished Paddington. There's a few more teachers to read the end bit coming, but we've nearly finished. So we need to pick our next book, and I thought it would be more fun for you to pick the next book rather than me. So I've created a Google poll which I'll post into your Google Classrooms, and there are 4 books for you to choose from, and you need to have a think carefully about which one you want, and then you pick the one you want and everyone else will pick the one they want, and the winning book will be read out soon. And I think it's Miss Reeve who's starting the new book, which is quite exciting, okay? So make sure I'll be able to see how many people vote, and it would be great if most people would vote for the new book, okay? Right, need to keep smiling today because the weather's a bit dreary. So keep smiling and hopefully I'll see you soon. Bye!